Here we are on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a walkthrough tutorial just like you would get on the day of delivery, going through the operation of our unit so you have something to refer back to. There is also a deeper dive on some of these components as well as other components if your name brand differs in our Helpful Hacks section on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, do all those awesome things so you can help support the channel and we can continue to do this. On the front of our unit, of course, we have our kingpin. We also have our 7-way plug right here. That 7-way plug is going to transfer all of your lights from your towing vehicle to the fifth wheel on here, as well as our battery charge line that'll pull off the alternator of the vehicle and charge your battery while you're traveling down the road. Last thing you'll have is your brake controller. Once it initiates off the brake pedal, it will send a brake signal through here to the brakes on the trailer. Well, speaking of brakes, we're also going to have our breakaway cable right here. This breakaway cable needs to be fastened to the truck itself, not to the hitch. The reason being is if something ever happens to the hitch, fifth wheel hitch in the bed of the truck, this is going to separate, pull off of the truck. We want that pin to pull out of that breakaway box and activate the brakes on our trailer. Now that can only happen if we have a good 12-volt system on our fifth wheel, meaning that we have a good solid charged battery. If we don't, then that system is not going to activate. We also need to make sure that pin is inserted in that box at all times, otherwise it will be locking up and activating those brakes when you don't want them to. In our front pass-through bay, we have our Furrion solar charge controller. Of course, we have our solar panels up on the roof. This is going to convert our solar power into a charging power for our battery system on our unit. There are a few settings on there in regards to what type of batteries you have, so on and so forth. I'd refer to the owner's manual just to be specific about different types and everything. It's a little bit to go into on that kind of stuff. So just know that all that stuff's in your owner's manual to get a better idea for your solar system. To the right of it, we're going to have our solar prep disconnect. Now what that's going to do is basically just disconnect our solar from our unit. In the event that we don't want to use it for whatever reason, we can go ahead and just shut it off, and that is going to completely disconnect it from our battery system, so it's not going to charge our system or anything. Now that is going to be separate from our actual battery disconnect. So if our battery disconnect is off, then this solar system is on. It's still going to connect to our batteries and charge our batteries off of that solar system, even if our disconnect is off, so no concern there. As far as our actual battery disconnect goes, it literally does what it says. It disconnects the battery from our RV system. We want to use this when we store our unit unplugged so we can conserve the battery power in here. Anytime we have our unit plugged in, whether it's storage or use, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that switch is on. So the converter system, which is our battery charging system, will actually go ahead and charge that battery when we're plugged in. In here, we're going to have some fuses and resettable fuses that are thermal. They're going to automatically reset, so some slide outs and stuff operate off of some of these things. If your slide out stops, the electric ones, then you want to give it about 30 to 60 seconds to kind of cool down and then maybe go operate it again. There's not necessarily a whole lot in here that needs to be maintained. So don't worry about it. That's just where everything is. In the event that you have to go that deep into troubleshooting for 12-volt power, you would come here. We also have a set of fuses and stuff inside the unit we'll go over later. This is our actual converter, that charging system we spoke about. It's going to change our 110 power, which is coming in right here, to 12-volt power going right here out to our battery. That's going to go ahead and keep our batteries charged up. We do see a couple of fuses right here. We can check in the event this system isn't outputting correctly. This is going to operate whenever you're plugged in. If not, it's not going to operate, right? You have a little cooling fan on there, you'll hear operating whenever it is plugged in. Over to the left over there, we do have our inverter prep system. An inverter is going to change 12-volt power to 110 power. In the event we don't have a plug-in, want to operate a couple of small 110 appliances, we can do that. You are pre-wired for that system. And then we're also going to have our LCI leveling system right here. Our main control panel for all that is right above us, and that is where all your jacks and everything are going to go to as far as that system is concerned. We do have a few fuses on there. In the event it's not working, those operate our individual jacks. We do have other videos on our jacks and how it operates. Of course, we're going to go over the operation of this one too. Those will be under our Helpful Hacks section. Now I'll give you a quick turn right here, and we have our actual front individual leveling jacks. These are for our landing gears. On the bottom right here, we do have a little cap. That bottom cap would come off, and in there is our override. We have a 3/8 nut in there. You put that socket on a drill and you can manually run this jack up and down. Now, of course, these are individual, one on each side. Before you do that, you do want to disconnect your 12-volt plugs before you override that system. You only want to do this if you're having an issue with the jack, can't figure it out. You would go ahead and put that in there, and you would just run that drill in forward or reverse, depending on which way you need to operate that jack. Also want to add, with our leveling system, we want to make sure we have at least 6 holes showing on these landing gears. Otherwise, you're going to run out of stroke on these jacks in order to level your unit. So make sure we're using at least 6 holes. We can see them, count them on there, and you won't run into any errors as far as trying to level your system in regards to that. Here we are on the driver's side of our unit. You'll notice in the first compartment we have our propane tank. You're going to have that in the first compartment on both sides, so you have dual propane tanks along with your dual propane regulator, generally located on this side. On that regulator, there is going to be a selector switch. We want to go ahead and use that to select which tank we want to be our primary. The way that works is we have both tanks on, we have our primary selected. It will pull from that tank first. When it empties out, it'll start pulling from that secondary tank without the need to move that switch. Now, your gauge will show red once that primary tank empties out. We want to go ahead and swap it over to that secondary tank if we notice it, and it'll start pulling off of that one primarily, and then we can get our other tank refilled. In our pass-through compartment right here, we have our LCI leveling system. That is controlling our electric jacks in the front and the rear. We'll go over the information on that, as well as the information on our control center right here. So we can see our electronic leveling system right here, made by Lippard. If we kick it on, we can see on our main display right here, we're going to have our battery voltage. Whenever we hit our arrows, it brings us to our auto hitch height. Our auto hitch height is used after we have been camping. Basically, this will bring us back to the point that the trailer was at whenever we disconnected from our hitch on the truck, so you don't have to guess what level it needs to be at. If you want to use that feature, you just hit enter and it will begin to extend those jacks out and put it at the height that it was in before you went into that auto level. Our next one is auto retract all. We would go to that once we are hooked up to the truck. We can hit enter and it will retract all of our jacks. Now, you should definitely double check your fifth wheel hitch and ensure that you are locked in before you do this, because once you pull away, all the weight and everything relies on that fifth wheel hitch at that point. So be sure you're locked in good before you hit that auto retract all. Our next one is auto retract rear. If we want to just bring up the rear jacks and leave the front landing jacks down, we can go through that. And our last one is manual level. Manual level is if we wanted to go in, hit enter, and we can see right here we have our degree marks. Now, 0 is our ultimate goal. That would mean that we're level. We would use these functions right here to raise those jacks. You'll have orange lights that pop up in the corners to let you know that those are indicating the areas where it is low. So if this blinking light on the left hand side is orange, then that means that our left side is low. Same thing on the right, front, and rear. So we would just raise that until that light goes out, and eventually once we hit that 0 mark, our green light in the middle will indicate that we are leveled out. If we need to retract those jacks, we'll just hold down that retract button for just a second. Our red light will come on indicating retract, and we can hit those buttons again and it will retract those jacks. Now, front will run front, rear will run rear, and then if we want to do left or right, it will do those left or right jacks. To take off that retract, you just hold that button down for a second and it will go back. Now, auto retract will once again retract everything. And our next one shows us our stroke on our jacks. So the LF and RF, that's left front and right front. So this is the amount that those jacks are extended out, and they only have so much stroke on them depending on what jacks they are. So if we stroke out, we run out of jack, you will get an error letting you know out of stroke, and that means that we need to put some blocks or get on a more level area that it doesn't have any more jack left to level that system, and it will stop the auto level. Same thing, left rear, right rear for our jacks. Also on this system, right whenever you turn it on, You can get your voltage display on there. And if you want to just operate your front landing gears, you just got to the campground, you're trying to disconnect from your truck, you don't have to go into that manual mode. You can go straight into operation by hitting those front jacks right there, and that will operate the landing gears in the front. Same thing if you want to retract them, hold down that retract for a second, and then it will operate once again just the front landing gears. From that point, you go into your auto level and allow the unit to level out. Now, I want to make sure that we're not moving around in the unit while it is auto leveling. It'll take a few minutes to hit that auto level point. Once it says it's complete, then you're free to go ahead and open up your doors and get inside the unit and start setting everything up. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. Below our control center, you'll see your valves for your gray tanks and your black tank. One more thing in our compartment right here, we do have that Lippert tire link system. That monitor is already in there. We have our sensors on our tires to be able to monitor our tire pressure and everything while we're traveling down the road. Behind me, we have our tankless Furrion water heater. That is going to be 12-volt powered as well as propane in order to heat the water in our system. And then we have our Dometic furnace right here. Once again, 12 volts, propane to heat the air. Our 50 amp service twist lock plug right here. Pretty easy. We just plug it in, turn it to the right to lock it in. We also have that little retainer ring on there. We want to go ahead and tighten that up, reduce the risk for that plug of being pulled out. Whenever we go to use or plug in our power rather, we want to go ahead and plug it in here first, then plug it in at our service station. That's to reduce any arcing on our plug right here. We also want to make sure that our AC units are off so we don't have any surges on that system. Just before our slide out, we do have our output for our sewer system, and behind that you're going to see a red and blue line. That red and blue line is for the low point drains for your winterization. you want more information on that, there it is in the owner's manual, or you can find our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks, but that's where we're going to drain the water out of our system. Here's where we're going to dump our tanks. We go ahead and pull that cover off, hook our 4-inch hose up, and run it over to our dump station. Now, if you have a dump station where you're at, you can leave your gray tanks open all the time, which is your 2 valves in that control center. Your gray tanks is just shower and sink water, no debris really or anything like that. Just let it drain out so you don't have to come out here and keep dumping it. Your black tank system, however, that valve needs to stay closed until you're ready to dump. That's coming from your toilet, that's sewer, toilet paper, all that stuff. We want to make sure we leave that valve closed so water stays in that system and nothing in there solidifies and dries up to where you can't get it out. So the procedure for dumping that is we're ready to dump. We go over, we pull our black tank valve, we go ahead and start emptying out the system. You have your black tank flush in that control center. We hook a water hose up to it. Turn it on, that is going to send water to a spray port on the other side of this tank and help push that debris down to this valve and flush out your system. Once you're satisfied, turn your black tank flush off, come over here, close your valve, and then you're going to go on the inside to your toilet, hold that pedal down, and put several gallons of fresh, clean water in there. Want to do that to make sure any debris that's left in that system will kind of get washed down while you're traveling down the road, but also so it doesn't solidify in there. You'll still have some little debris in there. It's going to happen. And then we also want to put our chemicals in there. That way that debris will actually deteriorate with the chemicals. From there, pretty much it. We do have more information on black tank flush and some other ways to do it in our HAP's Helpful Hacks section. This is how the owner's manual is going to tell you to do it. We've got some pro tips in that HAP's Helpful Hacks section. Our slide out is going to be 12-volt powered. You have a motor that's in the underbelly right there. You can't see it. If in the event that slide out goes out, you do have an override on the other side. There's going to be a hole in the J-wrap, and there'll be a little pin sticking out of the frame. You put your crank handle on there and manually crank that slide out to get you out of a jam. On our driver's side slide out, you're going to notice that vent up top. That's for our hood range vent over the stove. If you want to ventilate out, there are some tabs under there we need to make sure are open in order for that air to come out. When we store our unit, we have the choice to go ahead and close those to keep any vermin or anything from building a nest in there. On this driver's side slide, we're going to notice that hole right there. That is to override the opposite slide, and we can see our crank handle sitting right there in order to put our attachment on there and run that slide out in. We're going to notice our rear leveler right here. We can override that one by pulling that black plug out right there, disconnecting our 12 volts from it, putting a socket in there attached to a drill, and we can automatically retract that system with the drill in the event we need to override it. Right behind our axles, we'll notice that white valve. That is to drain out our fresh tank system. The 2 blue hoses right there are overflows for that fresh tank in the event that you put too much water in the system. On the rear of our unit, we are pre-wired for that Furrion backup camera system up there. We add the camera up there. When we turn our running lights on, it's going to power it up. We can see behind us while we're backing up or traveling down the road. We also have a receiver hitch down at the bottom here, and we're our 4-way plug. That way we can tow a trailer behind us. We have a weight rating on that. Make sure you're following the appropriate guidelines for that. We also have our factory supplied ladder right here. Why do we need that? We need to gain access to our roof. We need to make sure we're getting up there and checking the sealant up there every 60 to 90 days. We also want to check our sealant around our trim, our lights, our windows, anywhere where we put a hole in the side of the unit. We need to make sure that the sealant around it is good. We're looking for any cracking, peeling, deterioration of the sealant that can allow water entry into your unit that will decay it, rot it out, and you don't want any of that stuff. This is the most #1 neglected thing when people buy campers is the sealant. Whether you keep it under a cover or not, every 60 to 90 days you want to check the sealant on your unit and make sure that we're not allowing any water into our unit. Manufacturers require this. It's in the owner's manual. 60 to 90 days, maintain it like you would change your oil on your vehicle. We also need to get up on the roof after trips and make sure that no low-lying tree limbs or anything messed up our rubber, poking holes, scratches, or anything like that. And we need to clean our roof at least twice a year as well. On our passenger side, we have that front compartment that's going to have another propane tank in there that'll feed to the other side to our regulator. Also have more access to our pass-through bay. And if we notice under here, we do have a quick connect for propane that will pull off of those tanks right there. And you can add a grill or whatever you want out here. On that quick connect, you are going to have a little valve. We need to make sure that valve is off when we hook our quick connect up, otherwise it won't let you, and then turn it back on in order for the propane to actually flow out to the line. On our passenger side slide, we'll see on the rear we have our connections for our coax and satellite, as well as the GFCI protected outlet. We'll talk about that GFCI a little bit later when we get to that breaker panel on the inside. We have another hole in our J-wrap down here at the bottom. That one is for our spare tire. We can go ahead and put the crank handle on that to be able to drop that down. The override for the driver's side slide is actually no hole in the J-wrap. It's going to be mounted just over the tires and on your frame, so you'll be able to get to it without having to put it through a hole. It'll just be right above the tires where your wheel well is. On our entry door, we're going to notice some resistance when we open and close it. That's due to our friction controlled hinges right here. Help reduce opportunity for wind to slam that door shut or closed, or kids, whatever the case may be. We're also going to have our solid steps at our entry door. Our solid steps are pretty easy to use. We lift them up. We want to guide them up to the frame, latch them in. We don't want to just let them go, because these brackets will just go straight through the door to your interior. So make sure we're just guiding it up, placing it in there properly. When we're ready to flip those steps down, we pull that blue lever, drop it down. Now it's very important, after we leveled out our unit with our auto level system, that we level our steps out. We have these silver tabs on the bottom right here on both sides. If we push them in, these legs will come in and out. So put it in this position, we push that lever down, and we can move those legs in or out to be able to level out our steps. We do that for a couple of reasons. We want to make sure we have a nice clean flush threshold right here, so our door will close properly and not have any openings or gaps or anything like that. We also want to make sure that our frame doesn't bang up against the bottom of our door, causing any damage to either of those. Last thing we want to talk about before we go inside is our awning. 12-volt powered awning, 12-volt powered awning lights, and our awning is a sunshade, right? It's not really intended to leave out during storms or heavy rains or anything like that, because water will pull up on here no matter what, and it will collapse, or high winds can go ahead and pull it off, rip it off. You're going to end up with an insurance claim that you don't want. So you got bad weather coming in, roll it in. You're leaving your campsite for an extended period, roll it in. Rather be safe than sorry than be stuck with that repair. Besides that, when we do have our awning out, we're probably going to get some light dew, light rain, and maybe even some condensation from our AC that runs off onto this awning. We always need to make sure that we pitch our awning, lean it from the front or from the back, whichever one you wish to do. Both awning arms are going to work the same way. When your awning is extended, come over and grab this arm, and we're going to pull it down, and now our awning is leaning towards the rear and it can drain off. Whenever we're ready to roll our awning in, push that arm up, we can roll it in. Your awning on your slide out right here is going to work the exact same way. Pitch it to the front, back, whichever one you wish, just make sure you pitch it. As we walk in the door, we open up that cabinet right ahead, and we're going to see our control center. On our control center, we can download this Compass Connect app and Bluetooth connect it to our phone, so we can monitor our tanks and operate some of the options on here. We'll see all of our tank levels right here, our fresh tank, our black tank, and our gray tanks, as well as our battery level. So we need to stay in touch with that so we know what the levels are when we need to dump. Our ceiling lights, awning light, porch light, all controlled right here. We have our tank heaters, which is a mat that's on the tanks in the underbelly of our unit. In the event we have extreme cold weather, we want to kick those on to keep those tanks from freezing up. Have our 12-volt water pump right here. That is going to pull the fresh water out of our tank over to our fixtures. It's an on-demand pump, so whenever you have it on, you're going to notice that you probably in some places of your camper can hear that pump vibrating and pulling water out of that system. It's perfectly normal. Whenever you shut your faucets off, that system will shut off, so it is on demand, right? In the event you hear that continuously running and you're certain that you have all of your water off, then we need to check and make sure the fresh tank isn't empty, and we also need to make sure that we don't have a leak somewhere in our system. So we want to investigate those two things so we don't end up burning up our pump. Down at the bottom, we have our two awning controls as well as our slide outs. All of this stuff is all 12-volt powered, so if we have any issues, we want to look at our 12-volt system. Right below our control center, we're going on the wall, we're going to notice our Furrion thermostat. That's going to control our rear AC as well as heat throughout our entire unit. We'll go over the operation of that right now. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point, and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. Below that, we have our max air vent fan. That's going to control our fantastic fan in the kitchen. 4 speeds for the fan. We can also turn it off, open and close that vent from this control. On that wall bar right there in our first cabinet, we're going to notice that we have our 110 breakers right here, all labeled to let you know what they are operating. We're going to notice that GFCI outlet protection for the breaker right there at the bottom. Now that's going to control the outlets in all the wet locations, your bathrooms, your kitchen, exterior outlets, so on and so forth. Anytime those outlets trip, we want to come here to reset that breaker. Now they can trip for a couple of reasons. Either they got wet, or because we have too many appliances plugged in, coffee makers, griddles, hair dryers, all that stuff. Too much will trip out that outlet. So if you reset it and it trips right away, go unplug some of those appliances and then try to reset it. Also check and make sure nothing's wet as well. That will constantly cause it to re-trip right away. Above that is our little cover. This is our 12-volt fuse panel right here behind here. We have our blade fuses in there for all of our 12-volt components, all labeled as well. On the bottom of our island, we have our LP detector to let us know of any LP that might be leaking into our system. Has an audible alarm on it. You do need to test that before you go on camping trips or once a month. We have a little green light on there letting you know it's powered up. It is hardwired into our battery system, so it'll stay on all the time. You will have an expiration either on the front or rear of it to let you know when it expires and it needs to be changed out. Something we need to closely monitor so we can go ahead and stay safe in our unit. You're also going to have a CO and a smoke alarm mounted to your ceilings, powered by our 9-volt batteries. We need to make sure that we change those out regularly as well when we're testing the audible alarms. In our kitchen, we're going to have our 12-volt Furrion refrigerator. Open it up. There's a little control knob here at the top to go from off to cold to colder, and then also an off-grid option. Off-grid option is if we don't have a shore power connection, we're limited on our 12 volts, we're trying to conserve that power, we turn it to off-grid and it will reduce the amount of work that the compressor is doing. Also need to keep in mind that it is also intending that you're not opening and closing this door a lot, so it's best to reduce the amount of times you're going in and out of that fridge so your items will stay cold. Now, big thing about our fridge and freezer is anytime we shut this system off and store it, we need to make sure we are defrosting our freezer as well as cleaning out our fridge and getting water out of our system. So if we have ice in here, it's going to defrost into water. You'll have some condensation in here. After you shut that system off, we need to wipe all that stuff down, get all that water out. It'll reduce the risk for mold and mildew, and also that water can leak out of here and damage our wood components around that fridge, and manufacturers aren't going to cover that type of repair. So make sure we're defrosting it properly and maintaining our unit like we should. Behind me we have our 110 microwave with a hood range vent. We talked about the vent outside that needs to be open in order for it to ventilate out. Below that we have our 3-burner Furrion stove with a glass top. Glass top needs to be down during travel. It can also be down for more counter space. Flip it up when we're ready to cook. We have our 3 burners right here. Our propane needs to be on. We come over here, pick the designated burner, turn it to a little flame icon, and we crank it up until it lights. Now, a common thing that can happen with our propane system is we get air in our lines. We need to go ahead and bleed that air out whenever we first go camping. We pull our unit out of storage, or we just changed out our tanks, something like that is generally when you're going to have propane in that system from having it off for a period of time. So in order to do that, turn your tanks on, come over here, light the stove. It's as simple as that. It will take a little bit of time for that propane to finally reach here, bleeding it out. Just keep cranking on that handle until it actually lights up. Now, if we don't do that and we go to operate our water heater or our furnace, more than likely you're going to end up with a fault code in that system because it's trying to light and all you have is air in that system. So avoid those fault codes, come over here and bleed the air out of your system. Now, our oven's going to be a little bit more difficult the first time you light it after bleeding air out of the system. We're going to go to that knob there on the right. We're going to turn it and push it in until we get to that flame icon. Keep pushing it in. Manual crank until that pilot lights. It's going to take a little bit of time, like I said, because the hole in for that orifice is a lot smaller than your holes up here. Once it does light, keep it pushed in and hold it for about another 20 to 30 seconds till that pilot is warm, and then we're going to turn our knob to our desired temperature so we can go ahead and cook. We'll notice that each of these knobs turns red whenever we have them on, letting you know gas is emitting out of that system. We flip the switch right here, they'll turn blue. They still turn red whenever you turn them on. Flip it down, our oven also lights up there at the bottom. In our living room, we have our entertainment, our TV. Behind that, we have a coax plate for our antenna and cable. The antenna and cable coax plate is also going to have a little button with a little red light. That red light indicates our 12-volt boost. When we're scanning for antenna channels, we need to make sure that 12-volt boost is on. It's going to help you pick up more channels in your area. When we are scanning for cable channels from the campground, we want to make sure that 12-volt boost is off by just hitting that red button and it'll turn off. That way we don't scramble the channels from the campground. So antenna power, we want to make sure the light's on. Cable channels, we want to make sure the light's off. Go over information on our 110 fireplace down there at the bottom right now. Here we have our fireplace. We have a sensor right up here in the top right. We have to aim that remote at to turn it on. We have our Celsius and Fahrenheit temperature we can change to. And right here, this little flame icon is going to change the dimness of our flame. If we want to change the lighting of our flame, we hit the light bulb on the screen down here at the bottom, and it'll give you some different options right there. If we want to operate our heater on a timer, once again, electric heater, it is going to be this button right here. It looks like a clock, and when we push it, we can see some times pop up, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, all the way up to 8, and then it will go to 0 hours, letting you know that that timer is off. If we want to change our temperature, we'll use one of these 2 buttons at the bottom, and we can see once again we have a temperature down there, and we will go ahead and raise it until it kicks on, or lower it, we want it to kick off, or we can keep going until it says on, and that heater will stay running all the time. We kick it up one more time, and it's going to say OF, meaning that that system is off. On the rear of our unit, this will fold out into a bed. On our side right here, we have 2 recliners. We pull that handle right there, it'll recline out. We also have our lights, our heated and massaging seats as well. Here we are in our bathroom. In our shower, we have our standard hot cold faucet as well as an on-off button on the shower head. That's generally used whenever you don't have a dump station or you don't have city water. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you put into your gray tank as well as the amount of water you use out of your fresh tank system. So it's just an easier way to turn that water off and on in between showering off and lathering up. We can go ahead and just hit that button up there versus trying to find the sweet spot for the hot water on our faucet. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. You have that dump station in city water, you don't need to. Beyond that, we do have a vent up in the ceiling with a fan on it. When you flip that switch right there, kick our 12-volt fan on. We want to emit any humidity and stuff out of here to help reduce the risk for mold and mildew in this bathroom. Our toilet right here, pretty standard. We have a valve there. We're going to push it to go ahead and flush anything down. Only things we're putting in there is number 1, which is your liquids, right? We put that in there. We can just hit the pedal and flush. Number 2, which is your solids. we want to make sure we fill that bowl about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way with water, so we have enough to actually push those solids down to your black tank and not have any clogging in your system. In order to do that, barely push that pedal down right there and water will start coming out into that bowl and we can go ahead and fill it up. Number 3 is going to be RV toilet paper only. We want to make sure we get appropriate toilet paper so it degrades properly in that tank and doesn't cause any clogging whenever you go to flush it out. Last thing is our chemicals. Our chemicals help degrade whatever deposits are in there, and they also make it smell nice. In our bathroom, we also have our Furrion tankless water heater. We'll go over the operation of that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one to the other, we hit that bottom right button, and flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. Not too much to go over in our bedroom. We do have our second AC system along with a second thermostat. That's going to control just this AC. The other one's just going to control your living room AC and heat for the entire unit. This one, it does not have heat on it. The one in the rear will control the heat for the bedroom as well. On both your living room and your bedroom, you're going to find your AC assembly. On it, we have a filter. We need to pull those 2 tabs right there and clean that filter out every so often to make sure we're not restricting airflow to our AC. You're also going to see a vent up here. We can go ahead and open that up. Airflow will come out of that vent. That is our quick dump vent. That is to cool this area off quickly if we wish to do that. If we want air to flow out of our ceiling vents, we need to make sure that it is closed. Besides that, we do have storage under our bed, and we do have a TV backer location right here with that satellite and cable ports. You're only going to have that one antenna boost button there, and behind that living room TV, that is going to boost for all your antenna outlets throughout the unit.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit, and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV Superstores, where we bring the how-to you.